Hello everyone, welcome back to Activism Uncensored. So if you'd like to know what a Tory promise is worth, I'll show you. This is an interview with Michael Gove 2 months ago on Sky News.
Glad you brought up the cars. Are you scrapping or saying that no more petrol and diesel cars can be used in the UK or new cars in the UK from 2030?
Yes.
Okay, so there was some confusion about that yesterday. That's an absolute guarantee.
Yes.
Okay.
And then just yesterday, Rishi Sunak announced that he's scrapping a whole bunch of green policies, even some policies that didn't even exist in the first place, but we'll go on to that a little bit later. He claims that his dedication to reaching net zero by 2050 still remains intact. However, there are many critics out there who would disagree. Here's what some of the pundits have been saying this morning on the media rounds.
Anything which suggests that net zero is all bad news for the UK and that it is a dreadful challenge that we have to overcome and it's just a huge burden on our economy and on household finances is just plain wrong.
Absolutely wrong. And actually, this was described as stupid and irresponsible, not by a Labour politician, but by Lord Deben, a former Thatcher cabinet minister who's just finished as chair of the Committee on Climate Change.
This is the Prime Minister making a dangerous and desperate U-turn, throwing the UK economy, as we've heard from businesses, the well-being of its citizens and the future livability of our planet out the window.
And so I think that what Rishi Sunak is doing is electorally stupid as well as environmentally hugely damaging.
I mean, I'm in New York at New York Climate Week. I'm actually just come out of a panel discussion with investors. Everyone is just confused. They're slightly angry.
And I know businesses and millions of people feel let down by news from my own country that our Prime Minister is now backtracking on the UK's climate commitments.
These actually, the commitments that he abandoned aren't Labour commitments, they're Boris Johnson's Conservative commitments.
Rishi's in danger of being like the grand old Duke of York. You know, he marched his men to the top of the hill and then he marched them down again. What's the point of that?
They aren't arbitrary targets. I think we have to be clear. We have a legally binding target to deliver net zero by 2050.
Within the past half hour, a furious Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, has said in a statement, "If I could recall Parliament, if I had the power to do that, I would do."
Just think of this. Britain could lead the world in this, but the government's decided to throw that out of the window. And it will actually cost British consumers more because it costs more to fill up a car with petrol than it would be to power it with electricity. So everyone is a loser.
It seems that the Prime Minister doesn't care about the consequences, which will be higher energy bills for everyone, colder homes, worse health, fewer jobs, more dirty air and more climate chaos.
I just really hope that there is an opportunity to step back and, as what they always say, there's never too late to do the right thing.
So what is he thinking? Why is Sunak doing this? It could be that his wife stands to benefit by over £1 billion or $1 billion, I believe, for the 100 new fossil fuel licenses that he recently put in. Maybe it's part of this ridiculous culture war that the Tories are trying to brew up, this so-called war on woke, and you're going to be hearing more about this coming up into the next election. The reason so many people are angry about this isn't just the fact that we're moving away from green policies, it's the fact that Sunak can stand there barefaced and tell people that he's still committed to taking action on climate change. It's absolute lies, and it's beyond lies, it's gaslighting. We're going to see what he's had to say for himself today, but the fact that he can stand there and just say such barefaced lies with such arrogance, contempt, with a smug grin on his face as though he's Mr. Know-it-all, when this is moving away from the science, away from common sense. Sunak likes to pretend that reducing carbon emissions is an expense that we can't afford. That is absolute bollocks. It's an investment. It's an investment. It's going to help people. It's going to help the economy. Renewable energy is so much cheaper. People would save so much on the bills even if they just had decent insulation in the homes. Insulation in Britain has gone down by 90% since the Conservatives took over in 2010. So let's hear what he's got to say for himself. No idea why he's stood in front of a sheet pen. Looks like he's been through Johnson's dressing up box, but let's see what he's got to say for himself.
There are people who just want to deny climate change is happening. They're wrong. And on the other side, there are people who approach this with a kind of more ideological zeal, where they just don't care about the impact on families. I don't think they're right either. What I've done is pick the pragmatic course to delivering net zero, because I believe in it, and I think the country does and wants to do what's necessary, but they want that done in a fair, proportionate and pragmatic way. That's the course that we are taking, and I think that's the one that will command the broadest amount of support.
Yeah, there was a mention in your speech about this demand about 7 bins, which has got quite a bit of coverage. Do correct me if I'm mistaken, that was in the Environment Act 2021. If that was such a ludicrous proposal, why did you vote for it?
No, well, what this was a proposal to put in place recycling, different sets of bins to do consistent recycling across the country. And again, now that I've been Prime Minister, I've had a chance to look through all these proposals in more detail, and I can say confidently that we don't have to do these things. Whether it's the government mandating how many people drive in cars, government saying that you need to have 7 bins, or being forced to rip out your boiler in the short term or install energy efficiency measures which could have cost you £5,000, £10,000, £15,000, or change your car earlier than is necessary. Those are all things that we shouldn't and won't do. We don't have to do them to meet our targets. Our targets are world leading. We've met them all in the past and actually exceeded them. And this is, as I said, the proportionate, pragmatic way to deliver net zero, which will help families who all want to do the right thing, but we just need to do this in a proportionate manner. That's what we're doing. And look, and it's an example of the change that I want to bring. If you want to change the country as I do, we've got to change how we do politics. We've got to inject honesty into this debate. That's what I'm doing. And yes, I get that people will have their views, they'll want to be critical, but I want to do things differently. I'm going to bring change, and that is how we're going to build a better future for our children.
Yeah, utter rubbish. Not that you'd expect anything more from Rishi Sunak or the rest of the Tories. His Orvine friends behind him there probably have more brains than he does. The excuses he's given there are absolutely weak. He knows nothing about getting us towards a livable, greener future. His only interests are where his pockets are being lined from. Like I said earlier, his wife's firm stands to benefit to the tune of millions, billions of pounds, in fact, from the new fossil fuel licences that he put up. Is this his little strongman reaction to recent events, such as being forced into lifting the ban on wind farms? And then a few weeks ago, Greenpeace did an action at his house where they draped the black cloth over one of his houses. He was away at the time. You remember that story. So is this his way of sticking it back to climate activists, people who want to actually get somewhere in this country? As well as a lack of common sense in terms of policy, he's also come out with some absolute howlers, some absolute humdingers. He's claimed to have cancelled policies that didn't even exist in trying to brew up this woke culture war. That's only going to get worse as we get towards the general election next year. So he claimed that he'd scrapped a car sharing scheme, which had never even been put in the first place. He refers to having to use 7 different types of bin when you're putting your waste out, and that'd be too much for people to cope with. There were 7 different categories of waste, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody would have 7 different recycling bins in the home either. So let's hear what the commentators have got to say about these policies that he's cancelled that don't even exist in the first place. Here's Owen Jones, who was on TV this morning.
Boris Johnson, I always said, lied as easily as he breathed. But what this guy did was completely dishonest. He claimed he was scrapping a load of laws which do not exist. Compulsory car sharing. Is he high? That didn't exist. He, talking about those 7 bins, not true. There was a plan to have 7 streams to deal with different types of rubbish. 7 compulsory bins for everyone in the country. That never was going to happen either. Taxes on meat, never going to happen. Total and utter dishonesty from the Prime Minister. It's absolutely shameless. I mean, actually, you said, is this about politics? It's another word beginning with P, and that's panic. Because what they've been doing over the last few months is hitting this big red button to stop the boats on it. hoping that distract from things like, I don't know, the NHS collapsing living standards, schools collapsing. It hasn't worked. Their polling's going down. They're now about 20 points on average behind. So they think we're going to have a culture war over the climate. But you know what? This will end up costing people more. That's the problem. Because do you remember David Cameron when he said he was going to cut, can I say the green crap? Are we allowed to say that?
You said it.
No, you're not, so please don't do it again.
Okay, but that's what David Cameron said. And what he did is he scrapped the big, massive inflation program. Because it could save money. That's what he argued. It ended up costing money. Because if you didn't insulate the houses, people's fuel bills in a cost of living crisis went up.
Record bills now in the UK, and record profits come with that for the fossil fuel companies as well. What Owen Jones said there was pretty spot on as far as I'm concerned. He went on to talk radio to try and cover his tracks as well. Let's hear what Sunak had to say on the radio this morning. Again, they're pulling him up on the announcement that he's destroying policies that were never even there in the first place.
But I've just spoken to them, I've just interviewed them, and they said there is no mention of a tax on meat in any of their reports.
If you look at their report, it talks about an accelerated shift away from dairy and meat. It
That's not a tax on meat.
It said that diets will need to shift away. It also says we'd have to implement measures to bring that about.
So they didn't propose a tax on meat. Where was the proposal for a compulsory car sharing that you say you scrapped?
Again, you can, if you look in their report, it will talk very clearly about what they could describe as ride-sharing solutions, otherwise known as exactly what I was saying.
That's different from compulsory car sharing proposal.
What it then says euphemistically is one would need to consider demand-side measures to bring that about, which are otherwise known as compulsion or taxes. But elsewhere, actually, they're very open that taxes should be used to send a signal on things like reducing travel demand or the amount that people...
And one thing you'll notice every time he's pulled up, not just on this, but in other interviews, his absolute gall and lack of engagement. It's just head down, I'm right, no, this is happening, fingers in the ears, refuses to listen to reason, refuses to acknowledge any of the lies that he's told that have been laid bare in front of him for the British public to see, and he won't even respond to that. If he does, his only response would be, no, I wasn't lying, and then try and blag it out on some kind of a technical point which is way away from what he's actually saying. But remember, this man's never been elected to be Prime Minister. He's never stood in an election. I'm not going to go into the chances of his success next year when they do stand again. His predecessor wasn't even elected, Liz Truss. How can we have people like this in government? How can we have a system that allows people like this to get into government? He's unelected, he's unpopular, as you heard there, he's absolutely down in the polls, and that's against Keir Starmer's Labour, who are about as impactful as a soggy dishcloth at the moment. Very weak. It's hard to know what to say. It's hard to know what to say, except it's just the latest example of the Tories dragging us backwards and reneging on any pittance of a promise that they put out there in the first place. So let us know what you think about this U-turn on policies. What do you think about him inventing policies that he claims that he's cancelled out as well? Get in touch with us on Activism Uncensored. Drop us a message. Leave a comment on the video, or you can email us at activismuncensoreduk@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that gubbins. Thanks a lot for listening to us this afternoon. Have yourselves a good evening, and we'll be back with you soon. Take care.